So you don't buy things on Friday. Nkumaka gula la sabata nangana vutige. Pastor Tangalimodi said, that is, how do you hear? How do you read? Then, when Jesus said those things, he knew that the intent of everything is love. Now, yesterday or the other day, we said, do you know what? There's no point of... No, let me leave that point because some did not come. Now, in response, wanting to justify himself, do you know what the lawyer or expert of the law said? He said, just desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, who is my neighbor? That's when we begin to hear the story or the parable of who is your neighbor. But the question that we are dealing here is a salvific question. Why it is a salvific question? It is a question that it directs one how he can enter heaven. It is about love. Now, Jesus said more about love many, many times. A man was going to Jericho. This is a parable which Jesus now tries to make sure this guy understands it, because according to him, there are some people who deserve love and others does not deserve love. Right? So how do you read? So Jesus comes to him with a parable. And he says there was a man who was worshiping at Area 49, New Ganiva. This man had a farm somewhere towards Airwing. As one day he was passing through Ntiriza, he saw a man who had fallen on the ground. And he passed because he was rushing, and there was a board meeting. And another man, who was also a deacon from the very same church, was passing by the same road. But he was in a hurry because there was investiture on that day. I don't know, not investiture, but there was a training. And the third man who passed there was someone who was from Mangochi. But he was not even Adventist, because the guy who had fallen down who fell down was an Adventist. So one guy was passing by. This gentleman was from Mangochi, typical Njomba. Njomba was passing there, and he saw a man who had fallen. And he said, no way. And he started helping him. That man was not even an Adventist, but the man who had fallen, who had fell down, was an Adventist. And Jesus comes with a question and says, who among these are his neighbor, or was his neighbor? And the man who wanted to justify couldn't even say Njomba. No! He simply said the one who helped because he couldn't even mention that a Samaritan was better off than the one who showed care. The one who knew how to read was a Samaritan. Now, what does the story say? It is talking about... Now, the Jews believed that if you want to help, according to Shema, do not despise anyone. Now, I want you to read again Deuteronomy chapter... I think Deuteronomy chapter 6. Did you read? Now, I want you to hear, I think it's Deuteronomy chapter, the same Deuteronomy chapter 6, the very same, I think the very same. Verse 4. No, the verse 5.
Verse 5. And they shall love thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul.
No. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. Yes, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. I want you to hear how it reads again. Now, because you know how you read, from the context of a Samaritan, now you hear something that you didn't hear before. Now, Leviticus chapter 19:18. Yes.
18.
Verse 18.
You shall not avenge
You shall not avenge,
nor bear any grudge
nor bear any grudge against
the children of your people,
the children of your people.
but you should love your neighbors as yourself.
Okay, so who is my neighbor? It is my people. That was their people of my kind, Adventists. Those are, so I shouldn't bear any grudge against the children of my people, meaning I should not bear a grudge to any Adventist, but it is necessary or it is justifiable to bear a grudge against anyone who is not an Adventist. And that's how they understood. So when it was about love, do you know people they believed they should love? Their own people. That's why Christ said, how do you read? Then he brought an issue of a Samaritan. But a Samaritan proved to be someone who read better than them. He said, who did the right thing? The one who was found doing or understood the law of love was a Samaritan than those who were reading Shema, because the interpretation of thy people, your own people, it meant to them people of your own kind. How do you read? Do you know there are people here who have their daughter, because the one who wants to marry their daughter is from Mangochi or is from Sena, they would say, no, Nchevayai. Because they believe they are superior or they must love their own people. To them, their ethnicity is more higher and important than any other. How do you read? When they say thy people, to them they say our people. When they say our people, even when it comes to employment, they'll say, pajakumuzindi udi. Ai kunche umuzimandani mwagwaza, mwana wa watu. Uyalembedwe huyu. The one who is coming from Ntarire. How do you read? Now, the sad part is that this church is supposed to guard love more than any other institution on earth. The church is supposed to be an institution that guards love jealously more than any other institution. But it's a sad reality. Should I tell you why we are sometimes more worse than the Samaritans, the so-called Samaritans? There was a time I was a church pastor somewhere. I'll tell you the year. Those who remember when I was pastoring that church will know exactly that church. It was in the year of 2000. Now, we had moved from Deads and we were pastoring this church. And the house that we were living, it was owned by the bank. It was repossessed because someone had borrowed money. It was a very nice house. But our neighbors were neighbors like, I don't want to compare houses, but it was like our house was in area 10. The next house, our neighbor, was not sent until it is, no, I don't want to compare, but you understand what I'm trying to say. And in this other side, there was a block of houses. I think there were about 4 or 5, I don't know how much they were paying, but ours was nice. And there were people there that you do question their integrity all the time. I remember there was a time Pastor Bonya came to our house and we were fixing his vehicle, trying to fix vehicle. And he heard one of the organ that was mentioned, to something like, and the Pastor Bonya simply said, Abusa, no, musamuge pano. And our children, we had one that time. And yes, I think there was only one that time. If she was very young. And every morning, my wife would do, children, she would make porridge for the child every day. But because the other side, they were very poor people. If I say poor, I mean it. And when my wife prepares porridge for our child, they had also a child. I still remember her name was Impatso. One of the ladies had a child. So when my wife would be feeding our daughter, we would hear what they would say. Anawa akaja zose zimakatera ku toilet. So we knew that there was a problem. So what my wife did, whenever she was preparing porridge for our daughter, she was making double portions for Mhatso. And that became a norm every time. And they softened, that woman softened. And the other time she asked my wife where she was going every, I think what Wednesday, so my wife says, and she says, can I join? And she started attending Dorcas meetings on Wednesdays, not on Sabbath. Every Wednesday, she was not a woman that you would say talandira alendo.